seconds after Spain were crowned champions, one of Argentina's own coaches walked into the celebrations and, on fan video, drove a fist into Dani Olmo's face. Roberto Ayala, not a player. A man in the tracksuit. Eric Garcia had to pull them apart. Here is the part almost nobody flagged that night. The referee's report does not mention it at all, which sounds like Ayala got away clean. He may not have. FIFA has a way to reach an incident the referee never wrote down, and that is where this stops being about 2 red cards. Almost none of this came from the broadcast. The main cameras were on Spain, the trophy, the confetti, Ferran Torres, and the substitutes who had just beaten Messi's Argentina 1-0 in extra time. The Ayala moment reached the world through a phone in the stands, filmed by someone pointing the wrong way at the right time. And once that clip started moving, it did not stop. So watch what it shows. Ayala steps toward Olmo in the middle of the chaos. He grabs at the shirt first, then his hand comes up into Olmo's face. Olmo's head snaps back. He looks more surprised than hurt, and to his credit, he does not swing back. He plants his feet and stares. Eric Garcia gets between them and drags his own teammate clear before it turns into something worse. That is the whole clip. A few seconds, one punch, and a coach at the center of it. Before we go anywhere near rules and files, sit with the plain shape of that. The man throwing the punch was not one of the 22 who played. He was staff. And staff is the last place a disciplinary story is supposed to end up. Not that Ayala is just any member of staff. If you followed Argentina in the 2000s, you know the name, Roberto Ayala. They called him El Raton, the mouse. He captained his country. He played at 3 World Cups. He is one of the most capped defenders Argentina has ever produced, a man who built a whole career on being the calm one at the back, the reader of the game who did not lose his head when everyone around him did. Today, he sits on Lionel Scaloni's bench as an assistant coach. Think about what that job actually is. When the players lose control, the bench is the brakes. Reports from the night describe Scaloni and another assistant, Walter Samuel, doing exactly that, trying to pull their own men out of the fight and steer them off the pitch. Ayala went the other way. He went in. Hold on to that detail, because it is the one the whole case is going to circle back to. For a team already walking a disciplinary tightrope, a coach throwing a punch was the single thing that could turn a bad night into a formal one. And it happened while the entire world was busy arguing about the players. To understand how a coach ended up in the middle of a fight, you have to run those 10 seconds back. The whistle goes. Spain have won. And before the confetti is even down, Leandro Paredes turns and puts a hand around Eric Garcia's throat, standing more or less on top of the assistant referee. That is the spark. From that one grab, a wider brawl breaks off. Players from both sides pour in. Nahuel Molina, who had come on as a substitute, is reported to have swung a punch at a Spain player who had run on to join the celebration. Bodies pull at bodies. And somewhere in that knot, off to one side, Ayala finds Olmo. The players you could half explain. They had just lost a World Cup final with almost the last kick, down to 10 men, without a single shot on target across the whole game. Emotion running over is at least a human thing. The coach is the part that does not explain itself. He was placed there to stop this. Instead, he became a clip inside it. Here is where it turns strange. The referee's official report is the document FIFA starts a case from. It is the record of what the match officials saw and acted on, and it carries real weight. Paredes is in that report. His red card, shown after the final whistle for going at Garcia's throat, is written down. Enzo Fernandez is in there too, sent off in the closing minutes of normal time for a second yellow, a reckless challenge that sent Pau Cubarsí cartwheeling and left Argentina with 10 men for the rest of the night. Ayala's punch is not in it. According to reporting from the night, the officials' paperwork made no mention of the assistant coach striking Olmo at all, and if you stopped reading there, you would think it was over before it began. No entry, no case, no problem. But Argentina were not done, and neither is FIFA. Because the report is where FIFA begins. It is not where FIFA has to stop. Under the disciplinary code, the governing body can open a case on an incident the referee never recorded, and it can build that case out of video, broadcast angles, stadium security cameras, the same phone clips that raced across the internet. The Spanish outlet OneFootball reported it in plain terms. It is not ruled out that Ayala could be sanctioned after the fact if the authorities go back and review the footage. So the punch being absent from the report does not protect him. It only changes where the case comes from, not the whistle, the tape. And this is not idle housekeeping. FIFA has already confirmed it appointed a disciplinary prosecutor to look into the post-match incidents at the final. No names, no timetable, just the whole scene in scope. Which means the footage is not going to sit in a drawer. Someone has been handed the job of watching it, frame by frame. Read that back, because it flips the whole thing on its head. The thing that looked like Ayala's escape, that missing line in the referee's report, is exactly the kind of gap FIFA built a video power to close. The absence is not the end of the story. It is the door in, and the coach is only one page in a much thicker file. Step back off Ayala for a second and just count the night. Paredes, red card after the whistle for going at Garcia. Enzo Fernandez, red card at the death for a second yellow. Molina, reported swinging at a Spain substitute. A coach throwing a punch at Olmo. And a scatter of yellow cards through a final that Alan Shearer and half the studio spent more time refereeing than praising. Now, here is the rule almost nobody is reading out loud. Behind all those individual cards, FIFA's disciplinary code keeps a separate line for the team as a whole. That was just the story the public was counting. Behind the scenes, the code is running its own math. When 5 or more players from one side are sanctioned in a single match, the governing body can move against the team for misconduct on its own, separate from anything it hands any one player. And there is no clever math needed to reach 5 here. 2 straight reds is 2. Add the yellow cards handed out across a bad-tempered final, and you are already past the line before you count the coach at all. Argentina did not scrape over that line. They cleared it and kept walking. And the cards themselves are not free, either. Reporting on this tournament laid out the price list. A yellow card runs in the region of $10,000. A second yellow, the kind that sent Enzo off, around $15,000. A straight red, closer to $20,000. National associations usually pay these on their players' behalf, which is the first quiet clue that the badge is already on the hook for the night before anyone even mentions the team line. Then, on top of every one of those fines, sits that team misconduct charge, worth another $15,000 or so for a side that tips over 5 sanctions. $15,000 by itself is nothing to a national federation. For a body that turns over what football's associations turn over, that is a rounding error, not the kind of figure that makes anyone in the finance office look up. So the money is not the point. The point is what the charge says out loud. It says the problem was not one player having one bad moment. It says the team, as a team, failed to hold itself together. And that is a very different sentence to write next to a country's name. If you want this World Cup covered the way it actually unfolds, the paperwork as much as the goals, subscribe and stay with us. We take every flashpoint of this tournament apart while it is still moving, and this file is nowhere near closed. Now, back to the desk. Because that misconduct line points somewhere most of the coverage has not looked. Not at Paredes, not even at Ayala. It points at the badge. FIFA can punish the Argentine Federation itself for the conduct of its team. The players can be dealt with one by one, or not named at all, and the association can still answer for the whole night. Read the 2 ideas back to back. The players brawl, the Federation carries it. 11 men can walk away without a single ban between them, and the crest on the shirt can still land on a case file. There is a second thread here too, and it runs straight through Ayala. A coach is not a player, he is staff, and staff act on behalf of the association. When a member of the coaching team is the one throwing the punch, the conduct is not just his. It reflects on the group that put him on that bench. So the very thing that made the Ayala clip so strange, that it was staff and not a player, is the thing that ties it most directly to the badge. The version you have heard is that this is a story about a few hot heads at the final whistle. That is the small version, and it is not the full picture. The bigger one is sitting quietly in the code. A team that ends a World Cup final with its players and its staff throwing punches hands its own governing body a reason to open a file with the country's name on the cover, not just a player's. And this is not FIFA inventing a power on the spot to swat one team it happens to be annoyed with. The team route has been on the books, and it has been in use all tournament long. You could watch it working in real time. By the later rounds, reporting counted 13 red cards across 11 different teams, with that schedule of fines running behind every one. Teams that piled cards onto a single match were exactly what the misconduct line was written for. You saw the reach on individuals too. Earlier in this same tournament, Qatar's Asim Madibo was sent off in the group stage for a challenge that hurt Canada's Ismail Kone, and FIFA did not stop at the automatic one match. The panel pushed his ban to 5 games, enough to end his tournament right there. That is the machine now pointed at the final. It has already shown, this summer, that it will go well past the minimum when it decides an act was serious enough. And a panel does not read one night in a vacuum, it reads a player's history. Take Enzo Fernandez. His red at the final was not even his first of this World Cup cycle. In qualifying, against Colombia, he was sent off for raising his boot too high in a contested ball and catching an opponent in the face, hard enough to draw blood and stop the game. 1 red in qualifying. 1 in the final. That is the kind of line an investigator underlines, because it turns a single incident into a pattern, and patterns are what longer bans get built on. People thought they had the whole picture from the 2 red cards. They were looking at the smallest part of it. The reds are what the referee caught live, in the moment, with a card in his hand. The team charge is what the code catches afterward, in the cold light of the next morning, when somebody finally sits down and adds the entire night together. That addition has not been done in public yet. When it is, the number is not going to be 2. Now, to be fair, and Argentina deserve the other side of this, none of that is unique to them. Every great team has a final whistle moment it would love to have back. It would be lazy to pretend otherwise, and we are not going to. Spain were in that melee as well. Their players pushed and pulled in the middle of it, and a fair investigator looks at both benches. But the sendings off and the coach's punch fell on one side of the halfway line, and it was not the side lifting the trophy. But the conduct case does not live only in the punches. It lives in everything that came after them. Argentina were widely reported to have skipped their mandatory media duties once the match was done. Their players were described turning their backs during Spain's trophy ceremony, refusing to watch the team that had just beaten them lift the cup. And Dani Olmo, the same player who took the punch to the face, chose not to make a thing of the blow itself when he reached the press area. What he did speak on was the walking away. He said that in the end, what matters are the values you show the outside world. That a team like this should be an example and a positive one for the boys and girls watching. Most people scrolling past the brawl clip never heard that part. The pundits did not miss it. Craig Burley called Argentina's conduct an utter disgrace. Alan Shearer said the reaction after the whistle was terrible and that we have seen it from Argentina far too many times. Hold those words next to each other. Disgrace. Terrible. Too many times. That is not just noise from a television studio. That is the exact register a disciplinary file gets read in, and it is the picture forming around this team before anyone opens a single card. And there is a bigger frame around all of it. This was, by every indication, Messi's last World Cup. A generation waited to watch him say goodbye on the game's biggest stage. What they got in the final seconds instead was a throat grab, a coach's fist, and a team turning its back on the champions. That is the image this final risks being remembered by, and it is the same image a disciplinary panel now has to weigh. So here is the desk this all landed on. A brawl the referee's own report only half captured. A coach's punch that lives on a phone instead of on paper. A player count that trips the team misconduct line without much effort, a federation that can be charged even when no single player is, and a governing body with a video power built precisely to reach every one of those things. Remember the detail we told you to hold on to, the coach who went in instead of pulling his players out. That is the moment that turned this from a player story into something wider, because the second a member of staff throws a punch, the whole delegation is standing in the frame with him. FIFA has named no one. It has set no deadline. It has said only that it appointed a prosecutor and will share its findings once the case is built. So everyone waits. Paredes waits. Molina, whose reported punch sits on the same phone footage, waits. Ayala, whose punch never reached the report at all, waits to learn whether the tape puts him back into it. And the AFA, the badge itself, waits to see whether the file that opens carries a player's name on the cover or a country's. The trophy went to Spain and stayed there. What Argentina carried off the pitch was not just 2 red cards and a bad night. It was a case that reached past the players, up onto the bench, and all the way to the crest on the front of the shirt. So we will leave you with the one thing the file cannot answer yet. When FIFA's report finally lands, whose name belongs on it first? The player who grabbed a throat in front of the officials. The coach who threw a punch the officials never saw, or the federation that let a World Cup final end like this. Tell us below which one you would write down first, and stay close, because the moment this file reopens, you already know where to find us.